Our first guest today is D.L. Jennings, a 14-year active duty veteran of the United States Air Force, and thank you so much for your service and the work that you've provided for us. It's wonderful to have you with us. You've been serving under the Air Force Special Operations Command, and then you got your degree at the Korean class at the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center in Monterey, earning the Korean Consul General's Award for Excellence. And you did something that is highly unusual. You were deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as several countries in Africa. And tell us what you did when you were in Africa with a tablet, please.
Absolutely. So one thing that not a lot of people might really realize about deployments is that once you're done doing the actual work that you're needed for, sometimes you actually have downtime, and there's not a whole lot of options when you're in, especially countries like in the Horn of Africa where I was, where your internet and TV options are actually pretty limited. So one thing that I started doing to pass the time was, I'd grown up reading a lot of fantasy, C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, stuff like that. So I thought to myself, maybe a good use of my time would be if I were to start writing a fantasy novel, much like, some of my heroes who actually, both of those authors that I mentioned just now, also were, fought in World War I. So, what I'm doing isn't necessarily new. It's just part of a newer generation of writing while deployed.
So, you wrote a book on a tablet while being deployed. How long did it take you to write the book? And tell us about the book and where it is today. And
Absolutely. So it's called Gift of the Shaper, and it's actually my first attempt at a book. And it took me, I'd say, just about 2 years to write the whole thing, and that's coming up with the completed manuscript, going through, editing, making small changes to the plot. But 95% of the book was, just like you mentioned, written on my tablet, on the touch screen, no less, not even, a detachable keyboard or something, because that was just the tool that I had at my disposal when I was deployed. And after a while, I just got used to using the touch screen so much that it didn't even occur to me to use my laptop or something to start writing. But yeah, so it's called Gift of the Shaper, and it's an epic fantasy. So you're thinking like Game of Thrones, that kind of stuff. And it's about a young man who finds himself dragged into a war between two sides. And now one side wants to free their god, who's called the Breaker of the Dawn, and another side wants to keep him imprisoned. And they're led by their goddess called the Shaper of Ages, which I actually derived the name of the book from, Gift of the Shaper, which was basically the Shaper, giving her power to some of her followers. So that's kind of how I came up with the name.
And the book is getting rave reviews, so good for you. Now,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
tell me a little bit about what's life like now that the book is done and you're back here in the States.
Yeah, so I actually, it turns out that writing is something that I really enjoy. I'm very passionate about it. It took me 30-odd years to figure that out, but once I did, I actually found that it was something that I not only was good at, but it was something that I really enjoyed doing. So when I got home, I decided, you know what, I have this first book that I've written, and like you said, it's gotten good reviews from people. They actually really enjoy the book.